In the digital age, less than 10% of the public sector bodies' websites providing access to information and services are accessible. There is a huge market sector in the social area with significant potential for growth and inclusiveness. So my presentation will present the directive that has been approved by the Parliament from two perspectives. First of all, the perspective of the human right, and then the perspective of the market perspective, which is most important. The information society brings unprecedented scope for equal access to information, goods and services, but also the risk of more exclusion if such access is not guaranteed for all. As we live in an area of convergence, there is also an urgent need to fully address eAccessibility across different platforms and to therefore ensure that goods such as touch screen terminals, smartphones, tablets, digital TVs are accessible, and that audiovisual content is made accessible as well. And we know that accessibility is vital for persons with disabilities. And then we have the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which has already been recalled previously, which recognizes accessibility as a general principle. This is Article 3, which is of universal application. Then we have Article 9. It means to enable persons with disabilities to live independently and participate fully in all aspects of life, and to ensure that their access on equal basis with others to information and communications, including information communication goods and systems, and to other facilities and service open or provided to the public. This is the text of the UN Convention. So, a proposal for a directive on the accessibility of public bodies' websites for persons with disabilities and older people became a priority of the European Disability Forum, which has been advocating for many years for a binding legislation on e- and web accessibility. Finally, in December 2012, the European Commission released the proposal for a directive on the accessibility of public sector bodies' websites, bodies of the public sector. And the proposal lays down specific technical provisions whereby member states shall make accessible the content of certain types of websites of public sector bodies which provide basic information and services for citizens, participation in the economy and society. And the proposal aimed at harmonizing the laws, regulations, and administrative provisions of the member states on the accessibility of those websites by defining standardized requirements. And the Commission identified 12 categories of websites of the public sector, which, according to a study of 2001, were considered essential. The position of the European Disability Forum was different. Our position was that accessibility should be a principle, and to avoid to find and to specify categories, because the consequence would have been that it is impossible to include all categories. And unfortunately, the choice of the Commission was to identify 12 categories so that most of the services and of the goods were excluded just for the beginning. So we had a first timid step in the right direction, which in any case would not meet the expectations of the disability movement, as it was deemed too late and too little. And the scope of the directive appeared too narrow, since the proposed categories do not cover the majority of the basic services to the public, such as child care, primary education, secondary education, general and local elections, public transport, cultural activities. All these were outside the accessibility law. Furthermore, no satisfactory enforcement and monitoring mechanisms were foreseen. And the proposal uses a merely internal market legal basis, an Article 114 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. This approach was chosen because the diverging legal obligations and policies put in place by the EU member states fragment the internal market of web accessibility, implying additional costs on the market player and consumers and impeding the free movement of goods and services. This approach is necessary, but it is not sufficient, because Article 3 of the Treaty of the European Union states that the role of the market is, among others, social inclusion, equality, non-discrimination, and social justice. The internal market must respect this principle. And in addition to this, no explicit reference to accessibility as a right was made in the proposal. As a consequence, EDF decided to continue its campaign and started a fruitful collaboration with the European Parliament. And on the 27th, as it has been already mentioned this morning, on the 27th of February, at its penultimate plenary session of this mandate, the Parliament approved a far more ambitious, and here there is also already the new title, Proposal for a Directive of the European Parliament and of the Council on the accessibility of public sector bodies' websites, but also on websites operated by entities performing public tasks. So thanks to the commitment of the rapporteur and the positive work of the members of the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Committee, who expressed the view that measures proposed by the Commission were neither sufficient nor far-reaching enough, the text has been substantially improved, as extremely valuable changes have been introduced to the original text. First of all, the Parliament has extended the scope of the directive, which now includes all public websites and also those websites belonging to private entities which are providing services to the public. Services to the public. In Annex A of the, we have now the following categories included. I must be quickly because I want to stay within my 15 minutes. First, we have network services, gas, heat, electricity and water services, postal services, electronic communication networks and services. The second category, transport-related services, public transport, of course. The third category, basic banking and insurance services, including at least basic payment account, home content and building insurance, life insurance and medical insurance. The fourth category, primary, secondary, higher and adult education, all levels of education. 5, statutory and complementary social security schemes covering the main risk of life, including at least those linked to health, aging, occupational accidents, unemployment, retirement, and disability. The other category, health-related services, all the big sector of health. Child care services, other essential services provided directly to the public to facilitate social inclusion and safeguard fundamental rights, cultural activities, and tourist information. Furthermore, the Parliament has introduced a strong enforcement mechanism, including penalties for those who do not comply with the law, as well as a monitoring and reporting mechanism in which the representative organizations of persons with disabilities will be involved. It is important also to point out that online information services, which are increasingly obtained by handheld mobile devices, are also included. The Commission had not done it, but now this is ensured. It is also essential to enable interoperability of those websites with other softwares for the user, which regard in particular to users who need assistive technologies to access them. So also this is covered. The directive regulates the monitoring and reporting obligation of the member states regarding the updates of web content, and it is the duty of the Commission to establish the relevant methodology in consultation with industry and civil society stakeholders, including persons with disabilities and their representative organizations.
Le temps passe, mon cher. Nous allons
I let to concentrate. So another phase of our campaign has started, and we are calling now on all member states to adopt as soon as possible the directive. It is now we have a concrete proposal on the table, and it seems possible to achieve a good result, a legal and technical framework for web accessibility based on the principle of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. To conclude, I would say that the ICTs are so-called, let's say, the gateway to all types of public services, and they constitute a great opportunity to combat isolation and social exclusion. And the potential of accessibility for the internal market is great, since it will enhance transnational mobility in Europe, avoiding disparities and fragmentation of accessibility regulations at national level. Accessibility is a basic prerequisite for inclusive growth, and the implementation of this is fundamental. I had also prepared something about standards, but this will be dealt with by Mrs. Giovannini, which will speak after me. Thank you very much, and excuse me for having been so long.